Who could know, back in the early 1970s, that what started in a small brick building in Beaver Creek, Ohio, would emerge as an innovative powerhouse in the technology world. The company evolved to be called Lexis Nexis and would go on to impact the world in powerful ways. From its humble beginnings, this company and its people set the world on a path that led to the information age. Join us for conversations that reveal how this amazing organization evolved and grew.
All right, hey, we're back for episode 2. We're just about to crack into the interesting times of Jack Simpson, where he joined Lexis Nexis as the CEO or president. And so, Jack, we left the last podcast getting ready to ask you the question: how did they find you when they knew they needed a president?
Well, they found me using a search firm named LeMailey. They also had a couple of people that I'd worked with at IBM. They had Dave Lehman out with inkjet printer. They had another guy, Bill Cardwell, in Dallas working on copiers. And both of those guys were references, I suppose. But LeMailey came and went through the normal process, interviewed me, and so whatever. But my qualifications at that time were sort of unique. I started as a deep techie. I had 6 patents in the first 5 years. I had fertile ground in office systems. I'll tell you someday about before Microsoft Word, there was Simpson Word. I have a patent on it. You can read it. We called it IBM Word, actually, but it was my patent. But anyway, about 5 or 6 years before they found me, I took on business responsibility. I was named a systems manager at IBM. There aren't too many of them, but I had a planning group made up of like 20 or 30 salesmen that came in out of the field. They're supposed to help us figure out the next products. We had professional guys that knew about marketing planning, forecast assumptions, everything you need to know to be a business guy. So at IBM, I'm a systems manager. In addition to my technical arm, which has got software, hardware, blah, 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 all that stuff, it was a worldwide responsibility to deliver office systems for the office products division of IBM. There were 8 or 9. It was a big job. And I don't know why they gave it to me, but there I was. So I had all this business experience. I had to learn how to get along with all these different guys. I mean, you ever try to manage a group of 30 salesmen? And I'm a techie. Well, quickly I quit being a techie. I had to become a businessman. So I learned about all the things you need to know about marketing plans, how to deliver product into a sales force, advertising, public relations, blah, blah, blah. So I was immersed in it. But what was unique was I still had a technical background. So I could understand it, and there wasn't any smoke blowing because I could understand things. So I was unique in that. Second thing is I knew how to work in a corporation, a big corporation. I knew that the corporate fathers had to be served. When we would announce a new product, I had to get on a plane in Austin, Texas, fly to New York, and then get a car to Armonk, New York. I would go in to see the CMC. It was Tom Watson at one point. It was Frank Carey at one point, John Opel at a point. And they only would take flip charts, couldn't take anything else. So I had to redo everything in flip charts. And I would go in and make a presentation. Before I did, I had to touch every function that reported into them. So I had to go through customer engineering, manufacturing, everybody. And so every time I went in there, I had to do a battle to get approval and agreement, no non-concurrences to my product. So I was intimately familiar with big corporations and the fact that you have to get along and you have to give everybody a pound of flesh, but you keep some for yourself. So when O'Hara came looking for me, he knew that I knew that I would have to deal with the corporate fathers. And I didn't like it necessarily inside of IBM. And that's why I was such a wild duck at MDC at times. I learned what I liked about IBM. I liked the discipline. I like the fact that when you plan a new product, that you need to talk about how much revenue is it going to make? What is the customer segment for this? What's it going to do to your business plan? If we fund this, when you get the revenue back. So at MDC later on, I instituted the pricing meeting, and I forced that discipline in. But anyway, O'Hara knew I had that. Lastly, he was definitely afraid of CD-ROM. Okay, CD-ROM was up and coming, and it turned out that Jerry Rubin had gone to Times Mirror as his next job. He's got to have a job, he's got to live, and he was working on CD-ROM. So Bob was interested in my corporate experience, my tolerance, my ability to work with the corporation and still get a job done at the division level. And he was interested in the fact that I also had a technical background and I could deal with the new technology, CD-ROM, or whatever the next one was, because everything was starting to roll then. Intel was in the business and Microsoft was in the business. I dealt with both of them at IBM. So things were going to change, and he wanted somebody that was corporate based, technical based. He didn't think I needed to be a lawyer. It would have certainly helped, but I had now to rely on all the lawyers. They were everywhere in the company. I mean, we're loaded with lawyers. We had 500 lawyers, and only 10 of them were in the legal department. But I had to rely on them and had to create people to do product planning and market planning that were lawyers. And I think it worked okay. It would have been better if I had been more directive in the legal stuff like Rubin was, because that wasn't my skill set. So I worked on other things.
All right, Keith, got a question?
Yeah, I wanted to interject. Jack, when you showed up, so you take the job, right? Did you have a very well laid out list of, hey, these are the things that absolutely must go right for you to be successful? Or did you have to figure those things out on your own?
Well, I didn't know any of that because nobody could tell me. People that I interviewed inside of MDC, they had their head down doing their job. There was no grand, here's the state of affairs, here's our top 10, whatever. It wasn't any of that.
Yeah.
So I ended up, well, I won't get into the first week, but I had to figure that out. But basically, I came in with a philosophy that you got to be crisp. You got to find people who can get along. You got to find people to know the business. You got to get the right people in the right jobs. And we've got to find all the problems early and get after them. So wherever the problems are is where I need to be. I don't need to be somewhere where it's going well. I need to find the problems. I'm sure there's some parts of MDC I never met because they were doing well. And all I ever had, day after day after day, was problems came in the door. And I accepted that. That's my job.
So do me a favor, walk me through, because you were going to go there on our last episode, your first week. Did you go to building 1? Where was your office? What was it like when you walked in the door? Describe how you felt or what was going on at the time.
There was no grand greeting. I went in and they found my office. I'm not sure I had it until I showed up, but I got an office, had a place to sit down. There was nothing in it but a gray table and a chair, and there was nothing else.
Building 1.
Building 1. They found an office for me. They then found a secretary for me. Now, these are not button-down guys. They got their hands full, getting technology out the door, getting databases done, fighting in law schools. They had their hands full. They didn't have time to handhold me. So they gave me an office on day 1. And I found it. I got a secretary. I think I had a staff meeting. I then went to see O'Hara. I met all of his staff. There were 3 or 4 people down there that eventually made their way out to MDC in various positions because they needed to go out and Bob was going to retire. So that was day 1, pretty much, is my staff meeting, finding my room, finding my desk, get a secretary, and go have a staff meeting with Bob and my own staff meeting. Day 2, I look at my calendar. I have a calendar by now. I didn't have one the first day, but somebody had one now. It had a guy named Bob O'Connell, hardware. Great. Okay, fine. So Bob comes in. Wow, he is great. He's full of it. He comes in and he needs $1 million to redo the next generation UBIC, to make it do a half page in and out instead of by character or by word. By character, I think, is what it was doing. So we spent a lot of time communicating at the character level, which is an early terminal way, but he wanted to go to half page. He needed $1 million. I didn't have $1 million. I didn't have anything. So I then, after he leaves, I said, Bob, I need a few days. I needed more than that. I need a few days. Let me see what our budgets are. Well, I didn't have any budget. So that's done. On Wednesday, I have a meeting with O'Hara. I found out that Jerry Rubin is non-competing. Well, he can't do that. They gave him a severance for non-compete. He's now at the Times Mirror. He's got the dreaded CD-ROM. All right. I said, well, great, Bob. Who's going to take care of this problem? Who's the Mead executive that will go meet with Jerry and negotiate this? You. What? Well, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about settling a lawsuit. No, you're the one. And little did I know, that was a predictor of the future, because I had 2 or 3 more of those. And nobody told me that that was coming, but I learned how to do it, learned how to use the lawyers. And, we sued Toyota. Dwight Opperman, president of Westlaw West, and I spent 9 months in a tiny little room behind the judge's chamber negotiating. That's another whole story, how that went. He was bitter, and I heard about it for days. Anyway, that was day 3, Wednesday. On Thursday, I found out that we're out of computing capacity. We need a bunch more computers. We're out of scratch tapes. We need all this stuff. And I said, well, what's the bill? $20 million. Okay. So I call O'Hara. He says, Jack, you're going to make a board presentation. He said, there's nobody at Mead that's going to stand up for you and do this. I said, what? I just got here. Okay, that's me. So I start trying to figure out how to put together the compelling story of response times and customer satisfaction and all that. And I get introduced to the Mead board. I didn't know any of them. They didn't know me. So here's a new kid on the block asking for $21 million. I needed Bob's million. So that was Thursday. Let me think what happened on Friday. I used to know what happened on Friday. Maybe I'll have to do it next session. But
was there ever a chance that they would have said, Jack, we're not going to give you the money?
It was possible. You see, in the backdrop of all this, which I haven't discussed, Mead was always thinking about, should we exit? O'Hara was thinking about it. Jerry Rapp was the chairman of this thing when it reported to Womack. He was the chairman. And they were always thinking, they were scared. They didn't know what the business was. Jerry never told them what the business was. And the fact of it is, it was very hard to comprehend if you don't come from this kind of world. If you're not a high-tech person that understands a little bit about computers or searching or communications, it's just mystical words, doesn't mean anything. So they were always thinking about it and worried that it was going to lose value. It was going to get crushed in some way because they knew there was Westlaw. And the other backdrop for this year, I'm going to the Mead board. It was the first year that Mead ever lost money. They were down money. They were running out of money, didn't have the money. So it was the market that was killing them, the pricing that he couldn't control. I'm used to working on marketing and coming up with a plan and programs and so forth. They didn't have any of that stuff. It didn't work for them. So it was not a good time to ask for money. So I think I flew to Florida someplace. They were having some kind of get together off-site down there. And I flew in to some little dinky motel, middle of nowhere. This is awful. This is really awful. It's me by myself. I got a few charts under my arm. And I go to the Mead board for the first time. I meet some of these guys. And I ask them for the money. And next day they said, yep, they've approved it. Now, they had to have a lot of teeth gnashing, a lot of concern. But I think I'm the new kid on the block. I don't think they wanted to start out saying, well, we can't do that. So they somehow agreed that I'd get the money.
Jack, do you remember what this was? 1982.
What? Say that again.
Was this 1982? Your first week?
1982. The revenue for 81 was 31 million.
That was my question. Yeah.
And according to the corporate books, MDC was not profitable. I've seen other stuff earlier that says it was profitable on an operating basis. I don't know what that is. You add everything up and you add all the costs. You're either profitable or not. So we weren't profitable. We did, I remember in September, October, we did turn profitable, and there was a wild celebration. I remember another thing I found very quickly. I found in the legal department, which was run by Jack Albert, there were contracts everywhere. I couldn't get in the room. The file cabinets were full. They were stacked up on top. And I said, what are these? They said, well, those are contracts that we've signed with a law firm. I'm looking, and I said, why are they here? He said, well, when you do business with a lawyer, he's not going to take your contract. He's going to mark it up. He's going to want this, that, or the other. He's going to want something. And we have to deal with that. And I said, well, how many are there? Well, there's 3 of us. So I'm thinking quickly, that's revenue. That's money. So I get them some help. I think we farmed some out. We hired some temps, and we started working that thing down quickly. And that may have contributed to 64 million or whatever we did in 82, because we got through the contracts. The guys in New York were mostly there in Washington. They got it installed. We started getting revenue.
So these contracts waiting to be completed so Lexis Nexis or Mead Data could get revenue.
Couldn't get installed until that contract is agreed upon between the firm and us, the language. And you know, we had standard language that was protecting us. They wanted a language of their own. They mark it up, they give it to us. There's probably a negotiation in there or two. Until that's done, there's no installation. And so that's money that we've caught. We got our arms around it, but we can't get it. We can't eat it. It's there.
So any idea how many employees in 1982? 600?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so your employee number is something like 580 or something like that, as far as you know?
I think I might be 601. I don't know. I can't find my badge anymore. We ended up, when I left, with 4,000. That's not to be proud of. You look at your revenue per employee, it's got to be a decent number, and you really want it to come down. We would jump up in spurts. Every $100 million, I told Burnell, he didn't want to hear it. I said, every $1 million in revenue, I got to have a building somewhere. It's either out in the field scattered out, or it's here in Dayton. We basically expand. We have to have people to support the customers.
So when did you realize that you needed to build building 2?
Well, let me think. I think after a couple months. And that was the time. I'll give you another story. They had a real estate guy named John. What was John's last name? I'll come up with it. His job was to manage all the real estate anywhere in the world. And we had about 60 acres there in Dayton. He wanted to keep us down in 2 or 3 acres. I couldn't get it away from him. And I envisioned a campus or something. You know, I had a general concept. I didn't know when we would build it, but I said, I like teams to work together. I want them connected by tubes or something, some way of people getting back and forth. And I want a campus. And on the campus, I want ball fields. I want stuff that will make it interesting to come to a place that works as hard as we do. Because we work hard, and you got to have some relaxation. So that was my idea of that. So eventually we got an agreement on a campus. John reluctantly gave up, a plat at a time, and we would build a building. And again, guess who went to the board to ask for the money for a building? It doesn't go over well. Buildings don't seem to make any revenue. A machine is easier to sell than a building.
Now, Keith, you were at Newmark, right? So MDC had grown so much that they had acquired or licensed or rented space across the street, right?
That's correct. There was a whole bunch of salespeople in the Newmark facility. I will go back to one quick thing on the buildings. I was an Ohio Bell sales representative in 1977, 78, 79, 80. Building 1 was built in 1980. I know because I was responsible for the phone lines coming into that building. And I remember all those stacks of modems and phone lines.
Yeah.
I thought, this is a really interesting question. It's given my company a lot of revenue. I think I might change teams.
Oh, well, that's how you do it. You rub up against something you like better.
There we go. But yeah, we'd outgrown clearly building 1. And I remember I sold the phone system that had a maximum capacity of 400 phones. And I said to the person signing the contract, it wasn't you, Jack. I said to the person signing the contract, this is not going to be enough capacity for you. But they grew up quickly.
Well, we were more up to date on getting something done today than planning. Planning took a while, and I got planning by calling meetings and asking questions, and they'd know some and didn't know some, and they'd have to start planning a little bit, and that's how we got planning started. I found that every time I had a problem, it's best to meet with somebody, talk about it, hear what their problems are, see if you can solve the problem. Sometimes it's something I could do with a stroke of a pen, sometimes not. But I went to the worst problems, or actually they came to me, and I'd hear their story. I'd try to figure out what they were talking about because this is all new news, and then try to get them on a better track. And if I could help them with funding or headcount or something, I'd try to do that. But things don't tend to get better on their own. You have to work on them, and somebody has to jump in and do it. And basically, when a team would leave me, I think they had 3 or 4 things they could do to help themselves. That was my goal.
The undercurrent you're speaking to, Jack, is people listening to this will probably most notably be the thousands of current and former Lexis Nexis employees that either remember or want to know. But the undercurrent that you're speaking about, without saying it, is despite all the technology, despite all the contracts, you still had the sense that it's a people business. And I think all of us would remember, who have memories of you as our leader, remember that you cared a lot about what we nowadays call the culture of the company, I guess, how people work together, how they played together, and how we operated. And when we talk about our fond memories of Lexis Nexis, yeah, it's a lot about working on tough challenges, but it's also about, man, we really enjoyed doing it together. And I really feel like you were the original cement that pulled us all together. What's your kind of comments about that concept of the early days of Mead Data Central?
Well, when I was in IBM, even though I learned all the corporate stuff, I was considered a wild duck. I would bounce against the walls every now and then. And what I learned is you can over-process stuff. You can have too many processes. It's too hard to get anything done. And we spend a lot of our waking hours, most of them, at work. And work can be fun or it can be hard. There's some managers who, I don't know what I call taskmasters or whatever. They got a style that fits them and works for them, but there's no joy anywhere around. I believe that if people could work together at work, work together after work, had more of a positive feeling about coming to work, that they would do better. I remember at a sales meeting way back when I talked about the triangle. The triangle has got work in one corner, it's got family in the other corner, and at the top it's got yourself. And people would give themselves mostly to the left corner. If they had anything left over, the family got it, and there was very little for themselves. Mm-hmm. So I tried to stress, playing sports, doing something, playing music, Terry, do something to enjoy yourself, because life is hard. And you go home, you got problems. You come to work, you got problems. Surely we can make it a better environment than a prison. We should enjoy ourselves and let yourself be what you want to be. You got work to do, you still have to do it, but it doesn't have to be drudgery all the time. You can make a little fun out of it. And again, I say, what are you willing to do? I did some crazy things that were probably not me, but the PR department that put on our programs, our sales meetings every year, wanted that. And after I did it, I said, I think I can see the benefit of it. I mean, if I want to do that, what are you willing to do? What are you going to do at work and at home and for yourself? What are you going to do?
So it was deliberate. When you took the job, it was deliberately thought, I'm going to make this place a fun place to work. They're going to work hard, but it's going to be a fun place to work.
It was in my mind all along. And okay. I did it at IBM. I had meetings at IBM. I had music and slides and stuff like that. I once had a meeting and I had a PhD beating a drum at the right time. Okay. A guy named Parker Blevins. And he was my assistant at the time. I said, Parker, I got to have somebody play the drum. It's you. So he came in and played the bass drum at the right time. And you do what you got to do. So I had some fun at IBM, not as much as I did at Mead Data, but we tried to make it enjoyable. And
one quote that you gave me that I use all for the past 40 years is, life is not a dress rehearsal.
Yep. That's one.
This is it. You got one choice. You better enjoy it.
I will give you another one that he gave me. That was never leave anything important to chance.
That's true. I remember both those. I'm sure I did not invent them, but I picked them up and loved them. The one, Keith, you're talking about, I got from John Wooden, the UCLA coach. Mm. I was fortunate enough to be in a room once, and he made a speech, and that really struck me. I said, man, that's right. And so I use it. I use it myself, and I believe in it.
So
I kept using it after you left. So thank you.
So in
I tell my kids that today. Yes, you better make sure.
Oh yeah.
So in 1982, you joined. Revenue was $30 million when you walked in the door.
The revenue from the preceding year was 31 million. And I'm not sure at mid-year what it was. I don't think it was 32 yet. We sort of ramped up toward the end of the year. We got those contracts out and got the computers in. You can't make any money without capacity. So we had to get the computers in. Another crazy thing, which I'll talk about some future deal. When we put in a new computer, it ran faster. Our revenue went down. What? What kind of pricing is that? Well, we price by the hour.
Oh.
Holy smokes. That won't work.
By the hour.
And customers don't like it, and they don't like the occurrence of words, frequency of words. Every now and then we'll get 100,000, and we got to give them a credit because nobody's going to pay that. So the pricing system right from the start made no sense. And every time I'd poke at it, I'd find out that, well, the accounting system won't let us change it. Can't change it. What? We need to do something. So at one point in time, and you'll maybe move this to somewhere else, we were working on it. I'm saying we got to have some ideas. I believe it was Laura Horn and George Rellis. They told me if we could, that we might be able to fool the system into thinking it had search units, and instead we had a fixed price per search. You know, and I'm thinking like $5, $10, $15. You know, we got to figure out it'd be value priced, and they figured out a way with the help of accounting to fool the system. I don't know if it's still fooled or not, but instead of counting search units, we had a fixed price for a search. And then we spent weeks figuring out what's everything worth. And we modeled that. That was shocking that we modeled it before we put it in. We knew if it's going to work or not, we thought.